The lights are blinding, the crowd is deafening, and the energy in the air is electric. The world has seen legendary showdowns before, but nothing quite like this. On one side, the baddest man on the planet, a force of nature with fists like sledgehammers, Mike Tyson. On the other, a man who built his name not just on skill but on showmanship, a performer whose charisma is as lethal as his in ring ability, Shawn Michaels. Two icons, two different worlds, and one moment that would leave history gasping for breath. Imagine the collision of brute strength and lightning-fast agility. Tyson, a predator forged in the fires of the boxing world, known for ending fights before his opponents even had a chance to breathe. A man who didn't just win, he destroyed. Then there's Michaels, a master of finesse, a man who danced across the ring like it was his personal stage, flipping the odds in his favor with sheer unpredictability. Their paths weren't meant to cross, yet fate, as it often does, had other plans. It wasn't just a fight. It wasn't just entertainment. It was a spectacle fueled by ego, intensity, and a level of unpredictability that left even the most seasoned fight analysts stunned. Tyson, the knockout king, was never one for theatrics. His fists did all the talking. Michaels, however, thrived in the spotlight, turning every match into an unforgettable show. Their contrast was undeniable, but beneath it all, they shared one crucial trait. Neither man was willing to be anything less than the best. But what happens when the unstoppable force meets the ultimate showman? What unfolds when raw power collides with technical brilliance? The moment the challenge was set, the world held its breath. Would Tyson's ferocity prove too much for a man who made a career out of defying expectations? Or would Michaels find a way to do what no one had ever dared, humble a man who had never known fear? The anticipation was unbearable, the stakes higher than anyone could have imagined. This wasn't just about proving who was tougher. It was about pride. It was about legacy. It was about showing the world that dominance wasn't measured by just brute force or high-flying acrobatics. It was about who could survive when everything was on the line. But the night didn't unfold the way anyone expected. Something happened that no one saw coming. And when it did, it changed everything. The moment the bell rang, the atmosphere shifted. Every eye in the arena locked onto the two men standing across from each other, two warriors from different worlds about to test their limits. Tyson, muscles coiled like a spring, had the look of a man who had already envisioned how this would end quickly, violently, and with his opponent on the ground. Michaels, on the other hand, was unreadable. There was no fear in his eyes, no hesitation in his stance. If anything, he seemed to thrive in the chaos, feeding off the energy of the moment like he had done countless times before. This was never supposed to happen. In the world of combat sports, Tyson was a beast of reality, pure, unfiltered destruction wrapped in human form. Michaels belonged to a different realm, a place where drama and athleticism blended into something larger than life. Yet here they were, standing inches apart, fists clenched, ready to turn fantasy into something tangible. The buildup had been unlike anything before it. A challenge thrown, an ego tested, and a rivalry that took on a life of its own. No one truly knew what had sparked it, but theories ran wild. Some said it was a matter of respect, or rather, the lack of it. Others believed it was about proving that skill could outshine strength. But those closest to them knew the truth. Both men had too much pride to walk away. Behind the scenes, tensions had been simmering long before the cameras started rolling. Tyson wasn't one to tolerate disrespect, and Michaels had a way of pushing buttons most men didn't dare to touch. It started with a few choice words, subtle at first, but enough to plant a seed of doubt in Tyson's mind. "You're the best at what you do," Michaels had said with that signature smirk. "But so am I. And you don't intimidate me." Those words replayed in Tyson's head over and over. He had spent a lifetime being feared, watching men crumble before they even stepped into the ring with him. But Michaels, he wasn't playing by the same rules. What few people knew was that Tyson had always admired wrestling, not just as entertainment, but as a world where larger-than-life personalities ruled. And yet, deep down, he believed that no amount of theatrics could stand up to real, undeniable power. In his mind, this wasn't a contest, it was a lesson. But Michaels had something Tyson hadn't anticipated, a plan. From the moment the match was set, Michaels had studied Tyson the way he would any opponent. He knew that standing toe-to-toe with him in a straight fight was suicide. But there were gaps, small cracks in the armor of even the most dangerous man alive. It wasn't about trading punches, it was about survival. He had spent his whole career defying expectations, overcoming the odds when no one thought he could. This would be no different. As the seconds ticked by, the crowd's roars faded into background noise. The energy between them was razor thin, the kind that made onlookers hold their breath, unsure of what would happen next. Tyson's fists clenched tighter. Michaels shifted on his feet, every muscle ready to react. Then, in the blink of an eye, Tyson moved first. It was a blur, a sudden burst of motion that barely gave Michaels time to react. The air between them exploded with force as Tyson's fist cut through space, aimed directly for his opponent's head. But Michaels had anticipated this. He ducked just barely, feeling the raw power pass inches from his face. The crowd erupted. It wasn't a victory, not yet, but it was enough to prove one thing: Michaels wasn't going down without a fight. But this was just the beginning. And what happened next would push both men to their limits in ways neither of them could have imagined. Tyson's miss wasn't just a swing and a miss, it was a wake-up call. For a split second, his eyes widened, realizing he had underestimated Michaels. It wasn't just his speed that made him a challenge, it was his unpredictability. Tyson, used to overwhelming opponents with brute force, found himself on unfamiliar ground. His fists, which had turned champions into shadows of themselves, now seemed almost too slow. Michaels knew he couldn't keep dodging forever. Every second he spent avoiding Tyson's strikes only burned through his energy faster. He had to outthink him, outlast him. He couldn't afford to stand still. Just when it seemed like Tyson was about to land another crushing blow, Michaels dashed forward, using the smallest opening he'd seen. A brief pause in Tyson's movement. It was a risk, but it was the only option. Michaels landed a perfect hit, a sharp, quick jab to Tyson's ribs. It wasn't a knockout punch, but it was enough to make Tyson pause, if only for a moment. The crowd went wild. This wasn't supposed to be happening. Tyson, the fearsome boxer, was being pushed back by a man they'd never thought would be able to keep up. Tyson, breathing heavier now, snapped his head back, eyes narrowing with a quiet rage. The room had changed. It wasn't just about the fight anymore. It was about pride. And in his world, pride was everything. The tension in the arena thickened as Tyson's expression hardened. The champion began to slowly circle Michaels, his movements becoming more deliberate, more methodical. He wasn't about to let some wrestler, some showman, outsmart him. But Michaels, never one to back down, met him with a cold, calculated smile. For a moment, it felt like the two were locked in a silent battle, not just of skill but of wills. Behind the scenes, something even more dangerous was brewing. Tyson wasn't alone in his corner. He had a team of trainers and handlers who had watched his every move for years. Yet none of them were prepared for what they were about to see. Michaels had done something that most people never did. He had gotten inside Tyson's head. And now, Tyson wasn't just fighting for a victory. He was fighting to protect the very thing that had made him a legend, his reputation. The stakes had shifted from just a fight to something more personal. Tyson was no longer thinking of his opponent's moves. He was thinking about his legacy. But it wasn't just Tyson who had to keep his head in the game. Michaels, too, was walking a razor-thin line. Every time he got close, he could feel Tyson's power building like a storm ready to break. He had trained for years to dodge, weave, and flip his way through anything that came his way. But he knew that Tyson's fists didn't just hurt, they could end careers. And now, it wasn't just about holding his own, it was about surviving. Just when it seemed like Michaels had the upper hand, something strange happened. The lights above the ring flickered, casting the entire arena in a dim, eerie glow. The crowd's murmurs became uneasy, a ripple of confusion spreading through the air. In that moment of darkness, Tyson's posture shifted. He stood taller, his frame seeming even more imposing than before. But it wasn't the light that had changed. Something was off, something that wasn't in the script. Was it his mind? Was it Michaels pulling some kind of stunt? No one could tell. The fight had taken a bizarre turn, and with it, the tension shifted from the ring to something much deeper. Michaels, ever the showman, tried to shake it off, maintaining his cool. But inside, something was gnawing at him. Was Tyson truly just a boxer? Or was there something more, something darker that was driving him now? Something from the past, perhaps? Was this fight just a metaphorical match, or was it becoming something worse? The unsettling feeling didn't go unnoticed. The crowd, usually vocal and full of energy, had quieted. The sudden change in atmosphere felt almost deliberate. And it wasn't just the lighting. There was a presence now in the ring, something that even Tyson seemed to notice. He couldn't put his finger on it, but the air felt heavier. With a sudden burst of energy, Tyson launched at Michaels once more, this time with a ferocity that left the audience gasping. But Michaels, having felt the shift, anticipated it. He dodged again just barely. Yet, as he did, he realized something that sent chills down his spine. The way Tyson's movements had changed. It wasn't just anger. It wasn't just pride. There was something far more primal now in his attacks. Tyson was becoming more than a man. He was becoming a force uncontrolled and chaotic. What had started as a battle of athleticism was slowly turning into something darker. And Michaels had no idea how to fight it. The arena was on the edge of its seat as Tyson and Michaels continued to clash in a battle that had transcended anything either man had ever experienced. The lights flickered again, casting shadows that danced like specters around the ring. Tyson's fists, now faster and more unpredictable, came at Michaels with a relentless force that seemed to have no end. But Michaels, drained and battered, was still alive, still dodging, still surviving. Every punch he avoided brought him closer to something, but he wasn't sure what. What had started as a physical contest had turned into a fight for their very identities. Tyson wasn't just a boxer anymore. He was a hurricane of pure, unfiltered rage. And Michaels? He wasn't just a wrestler, trying to outmaneuver a stronger opponent. He was a man trying to keep control of his sanity in the face of something far darker than he had anticipated. With every passing second, it became clearer Tyson wasn't just fighting Michaels. He was fighting something inside himself, something that had been awakened in that ring. And Michaels? He was no longer playing by the rules of the match. He had stopped thinking about winning. Now, all he could think about was surviving, hoping he could outlast whatever Tyson had become. But then, as Tyson lunged forward once more, something unexpected happened. Michaels, with every ounce of strength left in him, twisted his body in a way that no one saw coming. His legs kicked out, his feet planted firmly on the ropes, and for the first time in the match, he wasn't evading Tyson's wrath. He was countering it. With a single powerful strike, Michaels shot his knee forward, colliding with Tyson's chest in a move that knocked the wind out of the champion. Tyson staggered, his knees buckling as he gasped for air. For a brief moment, the crowd fell silent. Then it hit them. Michaels had done it. He had taken the monstrous force that Tyson had become and turned it into his opportunity. Tyson, the man who had been untouchable, had finally been caught off guard. But just as the arena erupted in a deafening roar, something else shifted in the air. Tyson, despite the pain, refused to fall. He looked up, his eyes wild, as if the fight was far from over. But then, just as quickly, it happened. The lights above the ring flashed once more, brighter than before, and in that split second, Tyson collapsed to the mat. Michaels stood over him, breathing heavily, his heart racing. But even as the crowd celebrated, something lingered in the air. Tyson wasn't moving. Not in the way he should. His body lay there lifeless, still, but there was a look in his eyes that unsettled everyone who saw it. He wasn't unconscious. He wasn't defeated. Tyson's face was blank, void of expression, yet filled with something far darker than any physical wound could create. It was as if the fight had taken more than his body, it had taken his spirit. Michaels, his chest heaving, looked down at his fallen opponent. Was it over? Had he truly won? Or had something else taken place in that ring? The question hung in the air as the referee counted, his voice sounding distant as he signaled for the bell. It wasn't a simple victory. It wasn't a clean finish. This wasn't just about proving one man was better than the other. This had changed both of them in ways neither could understand. Tyson's rise to fame had been built on power and dominance. Michaels, on the other hand, had carved his path with resilience and showmanship. But in this fight, the lines blurred. Both men had been tested in ways they had never imagined. And as the arena's lights flickered again, this time in a strange, unsettling pattern, it was clear that neither would ever be the same. Tyson, though seemingly defeated, wasn't just a man who had lost a fight, he had lost something far more important, his identity. And Michaels? Despite the victory, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had won a battle only to awaken something far more dangerous than either of them had prepared for. As the crowd celebrated, unaware of the deeper change that had taken place, the camera focused on Tyson's still form, his eyes eerily open. And in those eyes, something shifted, the faintest hint of a smile. It was a chilling image that would haunt everyone in the arena, leaving them to wonder, was this truly the end, or had they just witnessed the beginning of something far more sinister?